What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Spotlight on Spurs. Today we have two guests joining us while we review the Villa game. We're also obviously going to discuss the very small game that's taking place midweek. And we're going to kind of deep dive into some tactics, some team information, selections, and that sort of stuff. For a returning guest who's been here pretty much from the start, we welcome in Christopher Hubble. How are we doing, sir?
Hello, mate. You all right?
Good, all good. And then someone who's making a debut on the channel, I'd like to welcome in JJ. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. How are we doing?
Hey, gents. Doing good.
Excellent. So, as I said in the introduction there, we've got Villa coming up tomorrow, and then a very small fixture in midweek. So we might as well just start straight from the bat, and we'll go into the Villa game, and we'll kind of have a little look and discussion around what sort of teams we would play. There's definitely been a lot of conversations taking place over the last probably week or so because of Kulusevski's injury. I did see a lot of people beforehand saying that Kulu should be playing because he needs to get into some form. And then he played, and then everyone said, why did you play him? But that's why we'll have the quick discussion, see where we are with everything. So first topic of the day is Villa game, starting 11. Personally, from my point of view, I feel like we can't go at it with a reserve team again because the first team need to have some minutes in their legs. So I would definitely be having some of them play. But let's start with you, Chris. What sort of 11 would you be fielding?
I think the back four, try to rotate that as much as we can. Maybe start either Romero or Van de Ven as a starter and have the other one on the bench. And then at 45 minutes, I would maybe Danso starts and then Romero comes on and Ben Davis comes on for Van de Ven and just give them sort of the pairing a mix up just to keep them fresh, as you say. Give them both 45 minutes. It's a nothing game as in terms of what we can achieve in the Premier League now. So it's just to try and hopefully get people through. I think I heard someone during the week say, obviously, we're playing against Matty Cash, and he likes to give our players some injuries. So whoever we play on, whoever we play on that side needs to sort of be wrapped in cotton wool, hopefully, and not get injured. But in terms of everyone else, I think just managing who's played a lot recently, the likes of Archie Gray, give him some minutes. I think there'll be some general rotation. He can't play. He's starting 11, obviously, that he's going to play, but definitely a lot of the boys that are looking to be in the final squad for Wednesday should be getting 30, 45 minutes at least. Oh, I think Luke's dropped off.
Yeah, I think we've lost Luke there. I mean,
I feel like I've been on it enough now that I could probably co-host and take over, but I don't want to steal his limelight.
You should do it. You should do it, Chris, mate. Can't have dead airspace, right?
I know. What do you think then, JJ? What would be your sort of starting 11, and do you think you'll mix it up? Do you think there's changes required?
Yeah, I think I agree pretty much with everything you said, mate. You definitely, from my perspective, you've definitely got to give people minutes. You can't just wrap everyone up and hope that they're going to go into next Wednesday's game sharp. So people need to play. They need competitive minutes. It's not the same as doing it on the training ground. Obviously, this being Tottenham Hotspur, we've got the dual kind of thing of like we're guaranteed to get injuries to key players. Yeah. It feels like that is definitely going to happen. And then it's Villa who out of nowhere have all of a sudden, last couple of seasons, it feels like they've got a grudge against us, and the whole, the Matty Cash thing you mentioned with Bentancur and things like that. Like they've generated a rivalry out of nothing,
Yeah,
and they've got a couple of players who really do like to get stuck in and get involved and stuff like that. So really, there's no way to avoid it. I think you give 45 minutes to each of the centre halves, and you let them. You don't play them at the same time. You alternate them to try and keep that defence as stable as possible. You rotate the midfield three. You could give Archie Gray minutes at either of the fullback positions, or you can give him the number 6 to take load off the midfielders. So probably 45 to 60 minutes for most of the starting midfielders, and then similarly, kind of same kind of thing for the wide players and the forwards as well. It's interesting because we're down to a minimum number of starting players now. So you definitely don't want Solanke playing the way he plays, playing for 90. Arguably, you don't want Richarlison either. So yeah, whether or not one's a like for like switch with the other, play the wide players, get Odegaard involved, get Odegaard and Johnson sharing out the minutes. Son will definitely need minutes. He's going to require a 60 plus to get himself ready for Wednesday. So yeah, spread it out, do it as best you can, and then just try to maintain the integrity of like the cohesion of what we're trying to achieve with the group of players, because there is still a big game. It's still an important game. We want to go out there and we want to get points in the Premier League. It doesn't matter if we're 17th in the league. We still want to give a performance, and those players out there definitely got to make up for what happened against Palace. You've got to be putting yourself forward to play on Wednesday. So yeah, plenty of minutes, spread it all out, like for like changes across the pitch. And I definitely don't think he's going to show his hand in terms of what he does in the midfield three for Wednesday. So yeah, I think I can see it going that way. Welcome back, Luke.
Cheers for that. That's the problem with doing live stream. You just never know what's going to happen. My internet just completely cut out. It's never happened before, and hopefully it never happens again. I was running around going, "What is happening here?" So, thank you very much, Chris. I did have you on the phone. I heard you take over the role, so thank you very much. Good little squad rotation there. We had like a Jed Spence ready to just step up and take over. Appreciate that. So I kind of did hear what you was both saying, and I kind of agree. I don't think he's going to go first 11. As I said, I think it's very much it's going to be a case of mixing, rotating, keeping players that need the minutes in their legs, and kind of making sure that we are competitive. There's no point completely changing the team up, going in suffering a loss and then really struggling. So obviously one of the problems being that we found out this week the whole Kulu injury, which has obviously meant that we've not only just missing Kulu, we're missing Maddison and then potentially Bergvall as well. Obviously 3 very different players, but all offer something in attack. Definitely for me, they're going to be we're going to struggle in that sort of space without them. But I always felt like Kulu performed quite well against United as well. I think his pace, not his pace, sorry, he's more like his strength and his power were a good outlet, especially against like an aging Casemiro, for instance. But how much do you think it impacts what Ange may do going for the rest of the season, really, in terms of not having them, and will Bergvall potentially make it? I think Ange come out and said today he won't. But how much do you think that'll impact kind of what we see going forward, JJ?
I think it's really hard to second guess what Ange is going to do in this situation. I know a lot of people are, not happy by the idea of us going for a Bentancur, Sarr, Bis midfield, because we've seen it a couple of times this season. It hasn't particularly worked. There's not a great deal of creativity in there. But at the end of the day, if the coaching staff decide to go with that kind of thing, then you do that with a view to creating a platform for your creativity to come from other spaces. Now, do you do that by giving a lot of freedom, maybe bringing Odegaard in instead of Johnson to go, 1v1 take on the right? Similarly, does Son then start? Again, the question being, is he fit and is he ready to do that? With a view to bring in his experience and again doing that on the left-hand side. Do you tilt the team? Do you keep Richarlison on the left-hand side, which has worked really, really well in the Europa League since he's been coming back, because he is a player that can hold the ball up? It's similar to what we used to do on the right with Decky. He used to play on the right in games where we wanted somebody who could hold on to the ball. We did it quite well against Man City, and he always plays well against Man City, Decky. And it's that physical strength that you were talking about. So we used to, if we were going to pop him out on the right hand side, it's with a view to him being able to hold up the ball for us and then allow the team to move on. So whatever he goes with, does he go with Odebear in the 10? I think there's a few people that are looking at that. Odebear is arguably the one player that we've got available who's had minutes in the 10. He's had them for us, and he's played there a little bit for Burnley previously. I would say that playing a number 10 role to a high level in a Europa League final, that's a big ask for a very young man. I would probably prefer to see, and similar, like people have been throwing their, football manager ideas out there. Let's get Mikey Moore in the 10. He's a natural born, baller and all this kind of things. It's a completely different world out there to throw someone into the number 10 position and to do it in a game of that profile. So I am a little bit more risk averse when I think about it being Tottenham and the things that typically happen to us. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see that midfield three, that slightly more defensive midfield three play. And if they do, I'll be interested to see what he goes with to try and get that creativity further up the pitch.
Do you think it also could release Porro a little bit more? If we've got a little bit more solid, then Porro's got a little bit more license to get forward. And it's strange to say, considering that you've got so many attacking players. But I feel like if Maddison's not around in Kulu, then Porro's probably our most creative outlet. So obviously having that slightly more defensive-minded midfield probably frees him up a little bit.
I'm not even sure it frees him up as much as he was free earlier in the season, but there's been this kind of change to the tactics and the way that the team has been doing things, particularly in the Europa League. The fullbacks have not been getting as high or not getting as high as often, but unlocking that inverted fullback position for Porro to provide crosses and to provide balls. And we've seen him underlap and score a few goals as well. So, and he's done it against United. So yeah, definitely. I think that will be the plan, to get Porro into those spaces to affect the game. And it'd be interesting to see if you went with a Solanke and a Richarlison on the left, you might still have the option of playing some balls in, but I think United's changed centre-back partnerships and playing three at the back as well. They're probably going to be quite strong in the air, so it'd be interested to see how they deploy that.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on the Kulusevski injury, Chris? Maddison and Bergvall.
It's all just come at the wrong timing. I think it's very typical of Spurs to get some of our key creative players injured right before a final. I think I even see today, not that it matters, I don't think he'd even get near the squad, but I think I see that Timo Werner's picked up an injury as well in training. Again, he's not been great all season, but it's just that depth. Again, you're losing. Not that Werner, I think, he probably would have been on the bench for the final, but
no, he can't. He's not in the squad.
Oh, he can. Right, that's even better. Then, to be fair,
so he would only be an option on the in the Premier League. But we haven't seen him at all. We haven't seen him at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's probably better to stay that way. It just shows, I think, that now maybe he can potentially get a bit creative. And as you said, put someone like Odegaard in that number 10. It's a tough role to play. But I think at this stage of the season, like, he started to throw Archie Gray into midfield now, and I don't think it does him any justice. It doesn't help him at all. It's just a case of putting the bodies in the position to keep the minutes ticking over, to keep everyone getting some game time. I don't know if there's anyone in the youth team that could potentially, in the under 21s, that could step up and maybe fill in, just to again have a go and just say, look, show me what you can do. See if you can do anything. Not that he's going to be getting a chance at the final for it, but you say our three sort of central creative players are all injured and more than likely going to miss the final. It does leave you with a big dilemma of, do you push Papsar into that, or play with three sort of centre midfielders and just give one of them that freedom to push forward and be that sort of creative player to try and link up the midfield to the strikers, not actually play as the cam, but just have that freedom to move on. You don't have to chase back.
It's a little bit less structured, isn't it? You don't have to have the as much defensive nous as what we have. Where we've been playing the 2 8s or 10s. There seems to be a little bit more structure. That seems to be a little bit more of a freer role, doesn't it? I have seen a couple of different suggestions that have come out over the last probably week or so. People saying maybe Son in the middle there and in the 10 role. More, I think you was bang on, JJ. I can't see more play in there. Even the fact that Odebear was shifted there on the weekend proves that for me Moore isn't ready to kind of take that role on. I also think when you're in the central parts, then the physicality is an extra level, whereas on the wing you can kind of be away from that physicality a little bit. You're a little bit more one versus one. So I don't think that there's going to be much experiment here. I think it's either Odebear's obviously not played there often, but Odebear has played there. As we see against Palace, or it's going to be Sarr. I can't see there being too much deviation away from that and bringing in other players. I think young players might get on the bench, but I think that we've got, other than the 3 big injuries in the same position, you mentioned Werner, but I don't feel like we're going to be bringing in loads and loads of youth team players at all for the coming games. And then kind of what I was just discussing for the final. This is would you start Son knowing? Obviously, I think part of it probably depends on how much he plays against Villa, but some people have said under every single circumstance they would be playing Son. Others have said that it would depend on fitness. What would your thoughts be on that one, JJ?
I think we're obviously all scarred by what happened in 2019 with Harry Kane, right? So we've got that in the back of our minds, but we've got to remember that, apart from Son, I think he's the only other person that was there in 2019. So the complete turnover of the squad, of the team, of the backroom staff. Maybe the kit man is still the same, if I'm not mistaken. But it's one of those things that the only thing that matters is that he is in the physical condition to start a football match if he does. So if he's going to start a football match and he's going to play 60 minutes or more, he's got to show against Villa that he is pretty much there. And then he's got a good little block of training and a couple of sessions before the final to get himself, as close to 100 as he can get. I wouldn't be, if he's not, and even if he's at 95 or 90%, what I would prefer to see is to go with something like Richie on the left-hand side and then Son be given 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on what the game needs at the time. Even if it doesn't need him, if God forbid the game is going really well and it's going in our favour and Richarlison stays on in that left wing position for 80 minutes and he gets 10 or he gets 5 or he gets brought on because he's club captain and we're 4-0 up and there's a bit of sentimentality to get him on the pitch, absolutely fine. But it's all down to how's he training at the minute, what does he look like against Villa tomorrow night, and then what's his load going to look like over the next 3 or 4 sessions leading up to Wednesday.
Yeah, I completely agree. Chris, what would you be doing with Sonny?
I think you're pretty much bang on there, JJ. I think with what happened, obviously, in a Champions League final with Kane, I think most Spurs fans will probably be screaming if once we see the lineup on Wednesday, if Son's starting. To be part of us, that'll be happy. Part of us won't be. I think tomorrow's game, if he starts and he gets through 60 minutes and he looks fine and he just comes off just as a precaution, just to give him the minutes. If I feel like if he looks like he can actually keep going, but it is just a precaution, then there probably is an argument there to start him. But for me personally, I would rather put him on the bench, give someone else who's had a bit more game time recently, is a bit more fresher, to start, and then, as you said, bring him on if it's required. If it's half time and it's the game's not going our way, and you feel like there's a change required there, then definitely get him on. Hopefully, I think he's not played 6 or 7 games now, so hopefully, I know it's been an injury, but hopefully he's come back fresh mentally. Hopefully he's ready. He'll realise how big of a game this is. I think he's come out in the press recently and basically said he stayed at Spurs because he wants to achieve what. So I think he will be pushing to get in that starting team. But for me, I would start him on the bench and bring him on as needed.
It's quite a nice little interview, to be fair. I watched it today. It was
Yeah.
quite a good one. Did make me fall in love with Sonny a little bit more again. But going back to that final, I think what a lot of people also, it's easy to kind of dismiss it, but I feel like you're in a catch-22. And actually, I feel like Ange is in that quite a lot at the moment, where it doesn't matter what he does. We said it about Kulusevski. If the result is not a win, then he's going to get slaughtered and pelted from every kind of aspect. If Kane didn't start that final and we lost, everyone would have gone, he's your best player. He can score with any single second of any single game. Even if he's half fit, he should start. He starts, we lose, and it's a case of, he shouldn't have started, he's not fit and everything else. And as I say, I think Ange's, he's got no credit in the bank at the moment. So any change, any swap that he does, he's kind of just being getting pelted for it. Some would argue rightly so because of the season we've had, but I think it is a little harsh and it goes a bit over the top. So in terms of thoughts on the rest of the Premier League season, so obviously a lot of people have been saying for quite a while now that it's a write-off. What would you use for the rest of this season? Would you be looking at getting some young blood in the team if you was Ange? Would you be trying to go being more as exciting as possible, score as many goals? Would you try to shore it up? What would kind of your objectives be between now and the end of the season in the Premier League, Chris?
Tomorrow's game is obviously to give people minutes for the final and just keep the team fresh. If we win the final, I would probably give a lot of the youngsters a chance, and then just let everyone have an absolute rest, because it's been an up and down season. Obviously injuries. I would, as we're not playing for anything in the league, it will just be to try and get us probably from 17th to 16th. For me, I would rather just see some of the youngsters come on, and the message to them would just be show us what you can do, show the club what you can do, and if you are ready to sort of work hard pre-season, there may be some room for you to step in, because I think there will be a massive clear out of players in the summer. It would be a shame if we didn't use some of the young talent we've got coming through and at least give them a chance. I know they get some pre-season friendlies, but give them that taste of Premier League. It's a sort of a nothing game as well. I'd like to see some youth come in and try and show their worth at least.
Yeah, how about you, JJ? If you was Ange Postecoglou, what would you be focusing on for the rest of the season?
I think I agree with a lot of what Chris just said. The Aston Villa game is effectively to us a training match. It's an exercise in getting minutes through legs, get everybody through it and out the other side safely. I've always said, since we've been on these cup runs, is all I really want in the league are performances, and I've been looking for kind of signs and signals of what we're trying to achieve. But there's been such a disparity. There's been so many changes made to the lineups that are playing in the league at the minute to try and protect the players for the Europa League that I'm not sure it's possible. Maybe it is. Maybe we could have done a bit more. But it's get through Villa, as we said earlier, get the minutes into the players that need them. Particular spotlight on Sonny and the minutes he gets and how deep he goes into that game. When it comes to the Brighton game, I mean, it all comes down to, it doesn't really matter. The Brighton game, genuinely, if we win or lose on Wednesday, we won't care either way. If we win, we go into that game, we still don't care about that game, but we're all going to have a great time in the stadium.
And potentially still drunk as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know what state the players are going to be in for that game 4 days after the final if they win it.
I reckon that there is some fans that will be either out on Wednesday or in the ground at Wednesday, and they don't make it home until they go straight to Brighton after 4 days out.
Just sit in the same seat for 4 days and just carry on drinking and eating pies and stuff at the stadium. I would be doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So it really doesn't matter. Like the Brighton game absolutely doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who plays. Again, if you want to give a few young players a bit of a reward for training really well with the first team over the course of the season in the Brighton game, by all means do that. We're going to enjoy the walk around at the end if we won it on Wednesday. If we haven't won it on Wednesday, it's going to be a pretty dull and drab place. I have no idea how many people would actually go to the game.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah, so like you're going to have 30,000 people. You're going to have a lot of seats on ticket exchange for the Brighton game if we don't win on Wednesday. And again, it doesn't really matter who then plays, right? It's not going to be an easy place. It's not going to be a nice place to be. So maybe don't play the youngsters if we've got a toxic kind of toxic follow up from not winning on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Big Bad Rom, Palace put out a strong team before the cup final. Why can't we? I've seen this quite a lot recently. What we seem to do as a fan base, we dismiss how recently we last played a game. So everyone brought this up about Palace, saying, "Oh, well, Palace have a big game in a week's time. Why they've gone full strength? Why don't we?" Because we played on Thursday night. We played on Thursday night. Most of the squad wouldn't have got back in till they wouldn't have trained on Friday. So they'd have done a little bit of a rest period on Saturday and then they're playing another game. So everyone went, "Oh, we've got a week until we play again." Yeah, but you've completely dismissed the game that we played 2 days ago. So if we would have had another week, I completely agree. And if this game was being played on Wednesday, then I think it would have been full strength. But the fact that we've got us playing on Friday and then within 5 or 6 days, we're then going, I think that there will be some changes. And again, going back to the Kulu argument, everybody said Kulu needed minutes because he needed to get fit and he needed to get back into his stride. He plays him, there's an injury, and then everyone says, "Well, you shouldn't have played him." So it's a catch-22 for me for sure. Ronnie says that Son starts regardless. I would like to see more. That's for sure. Hey, there we go. Next question, kind of moving on now. So we're going to kind of ease into the Europa League and kind of the tactics. So obviously I'm going to start here with you, JJ, in terms of the differences in the tactics. So obviously the Premier League and the EL, there seems to be a bit of a shift. We've probably last couple of games, arguably, that we've kind of played a similar sort of system to the Europa League. However, the standard, as we've said, because we're rotating out our best players and bringing in others, it seems like the standard has possibly dropped. But what are the big differences that we've kind of decided to go with in the Europa League recently for you?
I think it's some of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's the intensity, the frequency of the high press, the line. So where we put the high line, not so high in a lot of a lot of circumstances. Very happy to sit in the Europa League. Very happy to sit in against Buddha in a mid to low block because we were confident that we had the better technical players and we had the physicality on them. So in the away leg, we were perfectly happy to sit in knowing that they wouldn't create or they wouldn't be as much of a threat because we took away the way that they wanted to play, which is that counter-attacking style that they use. And they line up in a very similar system to the one that we use. It's been, whether you're allowed to use the word pragmatic with Ange Postecoglou, I don't know. Apparently you're not. But with the absence of a better word to describe it, it's been knockout football. It's been, one of the things you've got to consider is that in the Premier League, there are obviously differences between all the different sides, but it's the Premier League. So there are certain similarities in terms of the pace it's played at, the intensity, the physicality, those kind of things. In the Europa League, you get such a mixed bag of people that are coming in, of teams, sorry, and that kind of thing means that you might be switching things up for something a little bit more stable, a little bit more set. The double pivot in midfield, more traditional double pivot in midfield, as opposed to having one sitting and then the other two kind of playing 8-10 and leaving us open in the middle. That's definitely changed. Mentioned the fullbacks not being thrown up as high and not being thrown up into press as well, which we've seen. I think the Aston Villa Cup game was a great game to see what happens if you get it even a tiny bit wrong in the Premier League. So when you throw your fullbacks up to try and press and you get it slightly wrong, they go straight down the middle, down the other end. And obviously Kinski didn't cover himself in glory for the goal in the first 30 seconds or whatever it was, but still, that's what will happen to you in the Premier League. So in the Europa League, we've changed that. We've stopped doing that. We've done things a bit differently. And that's where it starts to get really interesting when we're thinking about Man United, because it's a Europa League game, but it's a Premier League side. And it's a Premier League side that we've already beaten 3 times, and we've beaten them in different ways 3 times. We've not played. We had one game where we really did go full Ange ball for a little while, and then we fell off a cliff. But yeah, we play slightly differently, and that's because they play a 3 or a 5 at the back, whichever way you want to describe it. So it kind of sets up very differently. My only thing is that Villa, if you're thinking about Villa to give you clues as to what we're going to do next week, it doesn't really work because Emery's kind of classic 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1 system that he uses, clog in the middle, is not like Man U's at all. So we're not even going to get any clues on Friday, which is a bit frustrating. I would have loved for us to play, a 3-5-2 team on Friday, and kind of get players doing that. But yeah, there's been a lot of differences in the way that we've played, and arguably the big P word is the key one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Chris, what sort of I know we were discussing before we actually came on, but what sort of switching tactics have you seen?
Not playing inverted fullbacks has probably been a big positive. And then we just look more, I think, defensively comfortable. I know it's a lot of our goals we've conceded this season have been individual errors, individuals making mistake. People seem to be switching off and not focusing on the game, and this is what caused it. In the Europa League, we've looked so much compact. We can tell again, the Bodo Glimt games, defensively, we just looked like we wasn't going to concede, and it's probably because we've dropped down and he's changed that tactic. Whether that's a tactic, I don't know if he's thought to himself, we can't keep playing the way that I'm playing, it's just not working, but he's quite stubborn, so I doubt it. I think he has maybe had a look at the games that have been coming up, and he's tried to make some changes to try and benefit us in the sense of us making us look a bit more defensively solid. But it's completely different to, I think there's a lot of things he still implements from when he first joined, but the way we play in the Europa League, it's just, it looks to me like it's a completely different style of football, and it actually looks better for us. So I don't know whether that could be, if we do win the Europa League, if that's something that may keep him his job as well, because the way that
we discussed that after. Don't worry, we discussed that after. You've jumped ahead, Chris. Yeah. Jumped ahead. I do think that, because on a couple of occasions, I feel like injuries have obviously killed a lot of the season and a lot of the momentum. But I feel like the injury that we got with Son was potentially worked in our favour. I think Son, you said it earlier, Chris, about mentality-wise. I think he needed a bit of a break. I feel like this season seemed to kind of, it really seemed to be affecting him. And obviously we swapped it out, brought in someone a bit younger. Do you think that the Bergvall injury may have played into his hands as well? Because obviously when that was first announced, everyone was kind of up in arms about Basuma playing because of the inconsistencies. But actually, do you think that he would have made that change and probably brought him as alongside? I feel like Bergvall kind of started to sit a little bit more, but Basuma, I think it's more evident that that's two sixes almost, or two DMs sitting there. Do you think that maybe the Bergvall injuries kind of helped him with this tactic, JJ?
What I would say is he'd already started showing a bit more of an orthodox double pivot in front of the defence in the Europa League. So yeah, in terms of the personnel to play it, Bergvall being out means that Biss steps in, and he's been brilliant. He's done really well. Obviously, Palace game excluded, he's done really well in that position. I just think he would have used the same, like it felt to me like a direction of travel. The changes tactically were something that were a direction of travel. They weren't something that was just being done on a game by game basis. So it felt to me that he would have probably been using Bentancur and Bergvall as a more orthodox double pivot, and then he'd have probably with Decky or with Maddison in front, and then what you would have probably done is you'd have seen a little bit more ball carrying from Bergvall than you would from Biss, even though we supposedly thought Biss was that press resistant player. Knock it to him out of the centre halves, and he breaks the first line with the ball at feet and moves forward. He's shown that not to be the case for whatever reason, and he's now playing a role that, to me anyway, and I didn't watch Brighton that carefully, reminds me of what I saw when Brighton came and played us, and when we were playing against them. This is the Basuma I remember, who was actually very good from a defensive perspective, and then he had that little bit of quality going forward as well, and will pop up and do things and score goals against us at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know whether tactically there's a difference, but yeah, there's obviously a change in the individuals that are being put in to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching Bissouma against us on a few occasions, just thinking, "Cool." And then when we signed him, I thought, "This is he's going to take us to a new level." And in some games, it's happened, but yeah, I mean, from a consistent point of view, we've probably not got what we all probably thought we were going to get. So, obviously, quite a lot we're spoken about in terms of tactics and players. So, you guys are the managers. You guys get to make the big decisions. So, what would your team be? And you can play it as Son started and had 60 minutes and we kind of go with that, or you can caveat it however you like. But what would your team be at this moment in time if you was the gaffer on Wednesday? Chris, we'll start with you, mate.
Vicario in goal, Porro right back. I think the back four sort of names itself. Romero, Van der Ven, Udogie. Centre midfields, I'd probably go with Bissouma and Bentancur. And then if we're just going to play with the three, if Kulusevski is definitely out, Sarr would go in as well. I don't know who I feel like Bentancur's he's been playing a lot deeper recently, and I think that suits him. I don't think Bissouma would be the one to carry it forward. So Sarr's that weird player where we don't know if he's the defensive, the attacking, the box to box. I don't really know where he sits, but it'd probably be him that I would allow to sort of step up the pitch and take the ball forward with, and just have Bentancur just being the sort of playmaker in the middle, just a bit deeper. Wide, I'd probably have Odegaard with Son or Tel, and then Solanke up front.
Son just basically on his minutes and how much he can do, yeah?
Yeah, if not Son, then either Richarlison or Tel, and then bring on from the bench. I think Richarlison will just... He's obviously good in the air. He's a powerful... He plays that powerful role up front. But I think more for his mentality, I think he'll be getting at the defenders. I think he has that... He can wind them up. He can sort of be doing the bits and pieces that could attract some of the Man United players to sort of get into it as well. So yeah, that would be my starting.
Trying to get a sending off. Are you starting off your tactics by trying to get a sending off, Chris? I love it. I absolutely love it, mate.
So if you said I'm the manager, you've got to play dirty. We haven't won something for how many years? I'm desperate for it, and a sending off would probably just give us that bit. Everyone would probably have a breath if Man United got an early red card or even a first half red card. I think everyone, all the Tottenham fans, probably go, "Here we go." There's still a hope.
I've supported Spurs far too long. If we're 4-0 up in the 90th minute, I'm still thinking there's a way that we mess it up, honestly. I was actually saying that I was saying to someone earlier on today that both teams have been so bad, it wouldn't surprise me if they both lost. It really, really wouldn't. JJ, would you be making any changes to that team? I think the defence is kind of set, but obviously midfield and forward line.
Yeah, totally agree. The backline picks itself. Some people a bit upset about Jed Spence, but I'd argue that actually before this kind of period that Udogie's come back in and been brilliant, Jed Spence actually had fallen off a bit defensively. So yeah, I've got no issues with that whatsoever. In the midfield, if I'm doing it just because being a long-suffering Tottenham fan, I'm just scared of everyone and everything because that's the way that Tottenham do. I would go with the least risky midfield three, which is that midfield three that no one wants to see, which is Bentancur, Biss, and Sarr, and then Sarr. The role I'm deploying is Bentancur and Biss in the double pivot, and then Sarr is just just run the legs off everybody. I'm not expecting him to link play. I'm not expecting him to pick passes and, feed the wide players or knock the balls over the top. That's not the role I'm thinking of. Just be the legs in there, provide the extra body, overload that midfield area, be neat and tidy, which is something that Sarr struggles with in possession of the ball. So he's got to really lock it in this game. And try to show that with youth, with athleticism, with those young legs, we can run rings like around players like Casemiro, for example, who he's a fantastic player. He's a very quality player, but I feel like you can run over him. I feel like you can run over that Man United midfield. So you can overload them in there, move the ball out wide, And then again, because I'm feeling a bit risk averse, depending on what Sonny does, I might keep Richarlison on the left-hand side and tilt the team. So Richarlison plays left because I think United will. I think they've got injuries right across their back line. So they're going to go.
Yoro, I think's that, isn't he?
Yeah, so Harry Maguire's playing for sure, right? He's the central centre back for them. Balls in the air anywhere near him are going to be a problem, but if you can beat him, if you can get over him without Euro, without De Ligt, you've got a chance, right? So you've got a chance. So Richarlison provides, that first contact threat from an attacking perspective. He provides cover defensively. So I might go Richarlison to start with a potential change with Son. Dom Solanke starts up front, no doubts about that.
Yep.
The right-hand side is a bit problematic. We've discussed, Porro arguably is the one that steps in that inverted position and gives us the creativity in that half space on the inside of the wide forward. I'm probably putting Johnson there just because he's so disciplined. He's not going to take a player on. He's not going to beat a player. He's probably not going to provide an assist for anyone. But happy to be proved wrong, Bren. But he's there. He'll be there at the back post, right? He'll be there for the tap in.
Yeah.
He'll get across to the penalty spot for a cutback. So if Udogie gets round and on the outside, if someone swings the ball across, he'll be there. So yeah, I'm arguably going to go with the most boring lineup that I could possibly go. But yeah, try and maneuver the team into a position where that gives us a bit of success. And if we want to pin back their wing backs and we want to do that, what we can do is once we've really given it for 60, 65, 70 minutes, if the game is still, evenly balanced or going well for us, you've got Odebear, Tell to provide pace. And we don't necessarily need hold-up play at that point. We want to continue pinning the back in the wide areas. And then you've always got the option if, for whatever reason, we need to change things up front. Richarlison can move into the centre, Solanke, dropping down into the 10 or coming off, whatever you need to do. But yeah, it's cup football. So Solanke, brilliant on penalties. Keep him on the pitch for 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've kind of teetered with the Johnson Odebear one. I actually would like Richarlison to start. I think Son coming off the bench again against hopefully a tired defence, hopefully would play into his hands a little bit. But the Johnson Odebear, it's really weird. It's almost like, do you go for nothing but goals? Or do you then bring Odebear in, who can probably create a little bit more, but you're probably not going to get the output? It's been such a difficult one, but I would probably go with that sort of team, to be honest with you. I think that would be the one. I think Odebear and Son are definitely have got ability to come off the bench and impact a game. I don't really feel like Johnson does that. I feel like Johnson is a guy that's going to start a game, possibly score, and then you can maybe again bring on some young, energetic legs. But I would definitely bock as many of the players as possible, JJ. So keep going with that theory. That would work absolutely perfectly. I know John in the chat. John absolutely has been going on for months and months about putting Porro as a right winger, and I actually see quite a few people suggest it on YouTube. This I just don't think you can have such a gamble. And also pushing a defender that far up the pitch, sometimes it's just it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it personally. I can understand the thinking behind it, but personally, I wouldn't go there.
Is that dropping Spence into right back then?
Yeah.
Is that what he's saying?
Spence into right back, and then playing Porro right wing. I did see someone suggest almost a cam role, which definitely not. But a right winger, I can kind of see it with the crossing ability. But what sort of problems do you think Man United are going to pose? Obviously, their star man is Bruno Fernandes. There's been some question marks around what midfield they will play. They've got a few options in the forward line. Diallo's a danger for me. I like him. I think he's a very, very good player. But what sort of I watch United, and as I said previously, they haven't been great, but knowing Spurs, they could easily turn up. So what are you expecting them to? Where are you expecting them to cause us problems? And that could be from our weaknesses or just from their strengths, JJ.
Well, we know Amarim's preferred system. I don't see any chance at all that he would deviate from what he's always done and what he's trying to achieve. I think when you play through it at the back and you've got injuries to your centre halves, that definitely affects that system, and that's something we should be looking to take advantage of. So I want to make sure that they don't get good quality possession on the wrong side of our midfield, because they're going to be trying to load those wide areas, right? They're playing with wing backs and they're going to be playing with wide forwards, and they're going to want to get into 2 and 3 man rotations around our fullback areas. This is a thing that we've struggled with. We've struggled to defend those areas. Our system is set up a certain way that we do leave space and we do leave gaps in there. So I don't want to see Man United consistently getting 2 and 3 players in, getting their rotations or getting past us and getting to the byline, so they can either lift it, pull it back, or smack it across. So keep them out of those areas for me, number one. And whether we do that by defending really, really well and defending a bit more cautiously than we normally would and ceding a bit of space in front of us as opposed to playing so high, or whether we're pinning them back with our attacking player, that's how we're going to nullify that kind of thing. The other thing is that if you've got, when you play 3 centre halves, the idea normally is that you're going to have one of the centre halves. Normally, the central one is going to be stepping up and into midfield, right? So it's going to be adding a midfielder to the midfield two that are going to play in there. So you're going to be able to free up Fernandes or Casemiro at whatever moment, or whoever plays in there. You're going to be able to free them up to push on a little bit more, and you're going to want them joining in your front line with whoever your striker is. So that, again, the way to do that is to ensure that your centre halves can't step out and into midfield, because you are keeping them back, right? So us with the ball, can we keep their centre halves engaged? Can we push people right up against them? Does that mean our wide forwards have to play a bit more narrow, which is not normally how we play it? Possibly, but when we talk about those inverted fullbacks, they are arguably the players, along with one of the midfielders, who are going to get into those positions. So in those half spaces between the centre halves, they're going to be the ones that move into that to try and keep them back, keep them pinned, and also keep them looking to be on the turn. So we want their centre halves, as often as we can possibly get it, to be turning facing their own goal. If they are comfortable and we play in front of them, I think we might struggle against the way that Man United are going to set up. So those are the things I really want to see in how we nullify their threats. And obviously, you've got quality individuals. You've got players like Ahmad that you've mentioned. Garnacho is a very good player. Fernandes is annoyingly good, and he always seems to produce in the big moments. Someone like Casemiro is he's seen and done it all. So he might not be the youngest out there, but he's got so much experience. He'll know what to do in key moments, and we really need to nullify that and not let him anywhere near our 18-yard box, because he will score in a key moment.
I actually agree with that. I can see a Casemiro goal, unfortunately. Chris, where are they going to hurt us, mate?
Yeah, I agree. A lot of focus is going to be required from the whole team, especially defensively. It's a formation that we don't really play against. I don't think you really see the 3 at the back in the Premier League that much anymore. But it's going to be the midfield, I think, is where the key battles will be. Obviously, they're going to try and play wide. We like to go wide as well, but because of the midfield that we've got, for me, that's where I think if we can play and sort of match, if it is going to be Bruno Fernandes playing sort of as the 10, just as a free roaming as he does, he just moves about everywhere and tries to link up the play. If you could put someone like Sarr and just say to him, mark him the whole game, don't let him get any time, don't let, when the ball's to feet, straight on him. For me, that takes away one of their outlets. But I think all in all, I think the way that we stop them is just by maintaining focus for the full 90 minutes and taking our chances where it matters, because I think that's been quite a big problem for Spurs this season, is just trying to remain focused. But again, in the Europa League, we seem like we've just been a different team. So I'm fingers crossed we can just keep that going. And yeah, just rule out that their threat will be the wide players, Diallo, Garnacho, and then Fernandes trying to get things going. If we can just keep them at bay, I think we'll make it through.
Yeah, I completely agree. As I say, I think their wide players are, so quite a few of them are inconsistent. But as I say, I really, really like Diallo. But do you feel like especially with the Europa League, it's almost like the league's been written off so early on that the players have kind of had a mental break. It's not like intense game after game after game. So they're able to really shift their kind of like what they're looking to do into these Europa League games. Because you're right, Chris, it's almost like they just concentrate, and they have concentrated on everything that they're supposed to be doing in these games. Whereas in the league, it's kind of slipped. And I think if we can get, I mean, winning your battles is going to be absolutely key, right? JJ, you mentioned it earlier. If Sarr can get around Casemiro and just buzz around him and kind of put him off and kind of be all over him like a rash, don't let him kind of be the dictator to kind of be the linchpin and go on to kind of win it from there. It's going to be so pivotal, and you can see the matchups all around. But because it's such a different system, and again, JJ, you mentioned it earlier on that we struggled against it. Is there any tweaks to our current system that you guys would do to try and utilize that? And obviously, one of the tweaks is going to be the Sarr in the 10. He's obviously going to play that differently. Is there any other tweaks that you'd like to see? Chris, you mentioned about inverted fullbacks and obviously changing that. Is there anything you'd go back to? Would you go back to a little bit more of Ange ball, or make any different additional tweaks to the current system that we are implementing against United to nullify them? I'll let you go, Chris.
Nah, I think just as I say, it seems like it's a different tactic we're playing in Europa League, and whether that's because of the injuries and he's trying to just, as you say, the league's sort of been written off early, and it's a case of let's just field our best team for the Europa League, and then in the Premier League we can rotate because it doesn't sort of mean anything. So I would just like to keep seeing the solid tactics that we're playing, as I say, not with the inverted wingers, keep them going down the wings, playing that way. The only thing that he's going to have to try and find a workaround for is the midfield, because again, the 3 midfielders we've lost for injury who probably ain't going to make the final now. It's just having that 10, that someone who's always, we've had that all season, even when we've been playing good or we've been playing bad, that position's always been there. It's how do you feel that? There's loads of players that you could potentially chuck into that position. There's other ways you could do it, but that tweak is the biggest sort of talking point and the biggest challenge I feel like we've got for the Man United game, because as you say, the back four picks itself. The way we've been performing, the tactics we've implemented have been really good. It's not always been, I mean, we the Frankfurt game, everyone sort of thought, oh, we're going to get turned over, and we end up playing quite well and we turned up to it. So just keeping that going. But yeah, I don't know what he's going to do with a number 10. That seems to me like the big headache he's got.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. How about you, JJ? What would you tweak, if anything?
I think Chris has hit the nail on the head. It depends what he goes with in that midfield 3 and what we're going to do with that. Because what I'd really like to see is if you've got a number 10 in there and a player that knows and can play that position, you want to see situations where the 3 centre halves are being given questions that they don't quite know the answers to, which is, do I come in and engage the number 10 because we've got a spare man in the back 3? Do I go? Do I stay? What am I doing? Because the idea being is that number 10 gets in there and gets on the ball and is starting to pull the strings. One of the centre halves has to then step out to try and nullify that, because you've occupied the other 2 midfielders, and then you create gaps, right? You create little angles to then get in, and then when we've got players like Johnson, you've got players like potentially Sonny, potentially Odobert Tell. You've then got players that are going to be running on the other side of that and getting into the half space and into the space behind. We don't have that. So we don't know, Odobert could go in there and he can play that, and maybe Odobert can go in and do it. I'm not sure. But if we don't have that, then what are we doing? Are we still going to be asking questions of their centre backs? Are we going to still put the same kind of pressure on them if we can't do that kind of thing? If we can't, have we got what we need to do the other thing I mentioned before, which is I want to see in a back 3 like that, and the way Man United play, I'd really like to see their centre half spend as much of the game as possible on the half turn or facing their own goal. But have we got that? Have we got that now? You know, the Porro ball over Maddison with the late runner. You'd argue that maybe Sarr can do that because he's already done it against Man United, and he's definitely got the legs for it. Has he got the timing? Has he got the touch and the control and those bits and pieces? I don't know. But have we got something else to change it up and to give them something different to think about, as opposed to our normal, trying to get players up alongside our wide forwards and try and create rotations in the wide areas, which Man United set up with 5 ostensibly across the back. If we're on the attack in that situation, they'll be quite well laid out in terms of numbers. It's the middle of the pitch that I think we can run over them. So that's where I'd like to see us dominate.
Yeah, completely agree. Big up, David. How are we doing, mate? So you think the league form is just a slip by Spurs players? Really, I suggest that our coach hasn't got a clue. It's nothing to do with injuries, because of the height of our injuries, it's tangible. No, I don't think anyone was saying that it's just been a slip up in the league. You can't slip up for 36 games. But I think what I was trying to say is, do you think that their minds have kind of taken off of the league as we've got further in the Europa League? Because, as we said earlier, you look at the structure, you look at how interested the players are. They seem to be confident. They seem to know what they're doing, and they're concentrated. So is it meant that, I know we don't like to say it, and there are professionals and they should go out and want to try every game. You can very much see a shift that everything has been focused on these games. Whether you agree or you disagree with that is a completely different question. I just feel that the concentration levels have been so high in these games that I feel like it's almost been a mental rest in the Premier League, which, as I said, it is a problem, but it's a different problem to if we went out of Europe and we was 17th as well. The really, really big question that we're going to ask, and we are going to kind of just do a little bit afterwards as well, in terms of what happens if we do, if we don't, etc., etc. But the big question that everyone wants to know is, will we win it? Can you see a world in which on Wednesday evening we are all drunk, delirious, or are we going to be drunk and delirious because we lost? Chris, let's start with you, my man. Are we going to win it? Are Spurs going to win the Europa League and be European champions?
The amount of people that I've spoke to and they've said to me, what do you think? And every different person I've spoke to, the scenario has changed, because there's so many different ways this could pan out. As you say, both teams have been sort of terrible all season. It could be 0-0 in extra time, and then penalties could be, it could end up going to 8-7, 9-8. It could be a Spurs turn up. It could be that Man United turn up and just absolutely just steam through the other team. So my Tottenham head's telling me that we win it. It'd be nice just to be able to listen to a final whistle and actually be able to jump and celebrate and cheer and have that, similar to the Ajax game in the semi-final, where it all the emotion, like everything, it was such a relief. It would obviously be even more than that because we'd finally got our hands on a trophy. So yeah, my brain is telling me that we win it. It's just that whole stat that we've beat Man United 3 times. Surely we can do it a 4th time. That's the only niggle that I've got, and I'm like, why have you got to say that? It's like when you watch a game and they say this person's not scored for 15 straight games. They always go and score that game. It's always the way. Just don't say it.
I have seen this so much this week, where people are saying, like Tottenham fans are actually saying, we've beaten 3 times, so we'll definitely beat them again. And I'm like, that is not the way Spurs work. If anything, I'd probably be more confident if we've lost 3 on the bounce, because the Spurs just don't have that. That is another thing, Chris. You bang on, mate. The amount of times where they'll sub someone on. Calvert-Lewin was the perfect example. Hadn't scored in 17 league games. He'll be scoring tonight. Don't you worry about that one.
Yeah, it's just the way.
So I completely agree. JJ, what do you think? In the chat, it's looking a little bit positive. We've got some wins, which I'll take. What do you think, JJ?
I'm leaving this one completely up to the universe. Do you know what I mean? Like, all I can say is that from a neutral perspective, surely Tottenham Hotspur deserve this. All right, if you're an Arsenal fan or a Chelsea fan, you don't like us, fine, I get it. You won't root for either team. But for everybody else in the footballing universe, surely you don't want to see Man United, who are also rubbish, win another trophy. It's boring. We saw too much of it in the 90s and the 2000s. It's rubbish. Tottenham, surely a due one. And even if I go back to 2008, I was there in the stadium, and that was a really good Chelsea side, and that was not a really good Tottenham side. But
Yeah.
sometimes the 11 go out, they put on a really good performance, couple of quality players and quality moments, the Berber penalty and, you know, that moment of calmness. Sometimes it just kind of lines up for you and it's your day, and it's not that one team outplayed the other team. It's not that simple. It's a cup final. So yeah, I'm leaving it completely up to the universe, because my natural inclination, having followed Tottenham for a very long time, is out and out pessimism, out and out like everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
We'll get, like, Romero's off with a red card in the first 30 seconds. Man United score from the penalty. Like, all of that's my natural inclination, because I've been battered by this football club for more years than I'd care to admit. So, universe, you owe us one. So Tottenham are going to win it for sure.
Fraz hit the nail on the head. You can't predict a normal Spurs match, as they can go either way, and then this one is heightened, and then you've also got the unpredictability of a United. At least normally we're playing teams that they're predictable. We know what we're going to get from them, and it's whether we can match the levels. Whereas with this United team, it literally could be anything. The mighty Cockerell has said that Man United are the king of scammers. They will win. So there is a little bit of negativity creeping in as we go through. Casemiro and Maguire from set pieces, completely agree. Richie being in the team could obviously help with that. Got extremely lucky in 2000. I don't care. I do not care if we get lucky, if it is a horrible win, if we play the most anti-football you've ever seen. If we win, that's all that I care about. Dave Clark, I've supported Spurs since 1960, so I've seen all the best players and seen them win trophies home and abroad. I'll be completely honest. We was having a little discussion. I think it was on Savage chat recently, and I was talking about the first 11 for the Pochettino sort of era, and it was like how many of the players would get into that first 11 now. It doesn't matter, because they got to a final, they lost, and if we get to a final and win, it just does not matter. So we're going to go into the alternate universe where we do win it. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to have these are going to be some quick fire stuff before we kind of wrap it up today. So, in your eyes, does he stay next year if he wins the trophy, Chris?
No, for me, I think Spurs. From the Spurs side, I think they'll do a review and they will have to say, yes, you've won a trophy and that's brilliant, but the league form and everything else, it doesn't match up with the direction we want to go in. We don't want to be potentially winning things every year and then finishing 14th, 15th in the league. It doesn't work like that. But ultimately, as I think I've said it a few times on here, Luke, Ange come out at the start of the season and said, I always win things in my second year. If he wins it, I mean, just looking at the way he is, I think the geezer's ready to go himself. I think he'll literally go, there's your trophy, Spurs fans. There's my resignation. I'm off. See you all later. And I think either way, whether it's a mutual agreement or whatever, I don't think he'll be there. Just because, I think between the way that it's going to be handled and the way that Ange has been, his body language, you can just tell he just seems fed up with the whole thing. He seems like he's just had enough. And for the geezer's own mental health, I think he'd probably want to step away and potentially try something else.
I can see all points here, and I can see where you're coming from. I don't think he resigns. I think it will be a mutual agreement, and he'll get his pay. But let me just show you that just in a 10-second snippet, I can show you exactly what it's like being a Spurs fan. So the mighty Cockerell has said, Man United are the king of scammers, they will win. And then he's followed it up by Spurs win. That is how it is being a Spurs fan. JJ, how about you? Does he stay? Does he go?
I mean, I can definitely see all scenarios playing out at the minute, right? It's absolutely mad in terms of the situation we find ourselves in. We finished the season 17th worst league season since I don't know when, since Harry Hotspur was playing on the corner of the high road, and we win a European trophy. And I can see every potential scenario going. I think the only thing that I'd say, I'm not sure I can see him walking away, like just saying, yeah, I'm done and walking out. Mutual consent, maybe that's just that that means you're getting sacked, but you're getting paid.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really mean
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. Yeah.
I can definitely see him getting the sack, and the board saying, league performance is the driver of this. Thank you for the trophy. We wish you all the best, and giving him the boot. I can also see a world where we're so elated, like we go into the final, we actually do really, really well, batter Man United, win it, and there's so much euphoria around. I can see people looking over and going, oh, maybe, and the board kind of bending a little bit, and then depending on who they've been lining up and who they've been talking to and who they're interested in and availability of those people, if you all of a sudden get quite a few knockbacks from your top 2, 3, 4 candidates, I can easily see a world where they can come out and say, we couldn't possibly sack Ange after he's won us a European trophy, first in 40 years, and first bit of silverware since 2008. I could definitely see the board coming out and using that as a justification for keeping him in post and continuing with him next season. So I have literally no idea what's going to happen. The only thing that matters is that he wins that trophy next week, and then I will worry about everything else after, once I've been flown back in from Bilbao somehow.
I completely agree. I can literally see and there is so many different facets to this. I think the reason why it would be the mutual thing will be just on the basis that we are a fan base that are protesting, and quite rightly so. And all of the protests, and I said this on some streams previously, all of the protests are about trophies. They're not about where we finished in the table. They're not Levy hasn't finished in the top 2 for the last 15 years. It's all about trophies. I don't see how it really looks as a club when you sack a manager who's won your first trophy in 18, your first European trophy in 40. If you're then another manager and you look at that and you go, well, if he's gone in there and won that and still got the sack, unless you're being that say, oh, well, it's all about the money, does that send the right sort of message out? Do you know what I mean? Like there was rumours today, let's use Xavi as an example. Xavi's turning around and saying he wants to guarantee that there's going to be a 3-4 year plan. Now, if Ange Postecoglou gets sacked after winning the Europa League, what sort of plan can he put in place? Do you know, Chelsea are different. I know they've done it at Chelsea and everyone throws that argument, but Chelsea were sacking managers and winning things consistently. I think we're in a different spot. So I completely agree. I can see every single possible outcome here. And I don't think there are going to be many that would like it if he does stay. Also, you've got to add in that the director of football. Will that change? Because apparently Munn was the one that brought him in, that sort of thing. And then the final part of it is also Pochettino. If Levy's driving focus is to get Poch back, you can't bring in another manager in the summer because he's going to be available in 2026. If you go and get a Glasner or whoever, and after a year, you're just kind of getting rid of him because you want Pochettino. It's like, as I said, so many different. If we are going to caveat that again and say that he stays, do you think that Ange Ball is going to consist of what we've seen now, or do you think he goes back to what he used to produce, JJ?
I think he may do a hybrid of it, but I think he goes back to his original principles. So if he stays and he's there next season, I think he goes back to it because he persisted with that even when we didn't have the playing staff during the injury crisis, and everybody was crying out for him to do something different, be a bit more pragmatic, to say that horrible word again, to try and get points, to try and get results, to try and get performances out of the team. And he didn't do it because his philosophy is, I'm doing this because I've seen what's on the other side. So if we get it right, it's going to be brilliant. Therefore, I can't see a world where he completely bins it and all of a sudden starts playing Mourinho ball. Maybe there'll be elements. He's definitely fronted up, right? He said in that Australian interview, he fronted up. There are things they would have done differently in terms of the player preparation for the season, the way they did things at the beginning of the year in terms of intensity. So there'll be changes to the way that he does things. He'll be learning all the time. He's a very experienced coach, but no, I can't see him moving too far away from his principles. And so it'll be, if the system does work, because it's worked everywhere else, but it hasn't worked in the Premier League so far. Is it a system issue or a personnel issue, or a bit of both? Personnel, over to you. Club, over to you. Langer, Paratici, bring in the personnel to make it work if he's still there. And if it's not, then that's over to the coaching staff. And we will find ourselves in a difficult position come November, probably.
Yeah, the Mike Cox said, do you guys think that we will show Man United anything new in the final that I haven't seen throughout the whole competition? I think JJ touched on it. The intensity of the Premier League is different. The physicality of the Premier League is different. So is it different to what they used to in terms of they play in the Premier League? No. But is it different to what European clubs offer up? Then I believe so. What do you think about that? I think, Chris?
No, I agree. I think you said about who would we rather. We spoke about in the last podcast I was on. I think you said about would I rather Man United or Bilbao? And I said if we get Man United, we've played them 3 times this year. Yes, we've beaten 3 times this year, but you know what you're going to get with Man United. Whereas Bilbao, you can watch clips and you can see how they play, but you've not played against them in that way. So I think playing against a European team would always be that would be where we would probably see something new from them, and also maybe have to change the way that we play slightly, because you need to do a bit more revision, you need to do a bit more preparation. Whereas with Man United, we've played against them 3 times, we know how they play, you're quite familiar with that, and you can. I don't think there's much change there that needs to be done. It's just a case of the formation that they use and the way that they use their players. We just need to tweak our team so that we try and counteract that.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, JJ?
Yeah, I think so. It's a league game. It's like a showpiece league game with a trophy at the end of it, right? So
Exactly.
It's a one-off. It's a straight shootout. No, there's no next week. There's no, well, it doesn't matter if we get draw. If we don't get the points this week, we'll get them next week against Brighton. That's not it. So it changes the psychology around the game a little bit. It's the kind of thing that either forges players into having wonderful games or crumbling under pressure and making mistakes. So that's definitely something to consider, especially as we've got arguably the younger lineup of the 2 teams. But yeah, I don't think it's about seeing anything new. Teams do their research. They know who they're playing, whether it's someone you play in the same league as or someone you're going to face. They're always running the tape in the background anyway and coming up with the clips. So yeah, it's one of those games where it's really, really hard to call. If the only thing is do these injuries mean that we do something different that United haven't seen yet? I'm not sure with United's injuries, they will do anything drastically different.
No, completely agree. Franz mentioned it earlier. I don't think Paratici gets on with Ange if that's if Paratici gets a job. No, I completely agree. I think from all of the rumours, it's kind of like if Paratici's in, then Ange is probably out. And I was going to speak about this later on, but we can do it now. Paratici isn't the Messiah that Spurs fans think he is. The success at Juventus was down to Morata. When Paratici took over, he made some horrendous purchases. And then Franz followed it up by saying very 50-50 Spurs scoutings haven't been great for years. I agree when you look at some of Paratici's signings, they have been poor. But if you look at some of the other signings he's made, they've been very good in my eyes. And also, I think people massively underestimate what sort of changes he made at club inside the club, and especially in the youth teams. So players like Mikey Moore probably wouldn't be around if Paratici hadn't come in. He changed the wage structure. He changed the way that we look at youth. You can see that we're obviously signing young players, not just for the first team, but they're coming into our youth teams now, and we're keeping the better of these players as well. So I think Paratici, for me, has got an idea and an understanding of football, which I don't think we've had of people in that position personally. I was going to say, are you fans of Paratici? Would you bring him in? I done a poll on Twitter. I'm not sure if anyone see it, but we've got Paratici. You've got Lucas Ocampos, who looks like he could potentially be looking for a job. And then I threw a kind of left field one out there in Dan Ashworth, because I think he revolutionised a lot of Brighton and also from Newcastle. So are you a fan of Paratici, JJ, and would you like to see him on board?
I think it's really hard to say because I really don't have any insight into how much people have to do with different transfers and whose hand was in what. And, is there bleed over between signings that after Paratici got banned that he was already involved in while he was there? But I don't really know enough about the way that it works and it interacts. But you could definitely see a positive model where Langer is leading the data-led approach that Tottenham are very keen on installing, and Paratici is the one who is a bit more of like the deal maker in getting things over the line. The one thing that I do notice about Paratici is his contact book runs deep in Italy. So all of the signings, right? It's Italian league signings, even if they're not Italian players.
Yep.
They are, it's heavily Juve focused, where he was working day to day and therefore seeing the players, and he will have dealt with them, their families, their agents, etc. You need more than that. You need more than that. If Tottenham are going to compete, because I've said this before, Tottenham don't buy in the A category of players. We're not in there because those players are not interested in us and we won't pay the money. So we're not buying in the A category. So we have got to get into that B category where we can compete and we have got the money and we have got the reputation. And to compete with the bigger teams, you've got to be finding the gems. You've got to find Destiny Udogie, but there's only so many of them in Italy. So you've got to be in Spain and France and, you've got to be across every league and every place. And I've no idea if Paratici's address, his contact book does that. Maybe that's where Langer's approach helps.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, Chris?
No, I totally agree. It doesn't seem like it's the worst way, but same as what JJ said, you need to sort of look past if it's just going to be the Italian league, then obviously there'll be some benefits there, but I think on a full scale we need to be looking at the wider sort of pool of players and trying to attract them in. We've always sort of been for me, Tottenham have been the club that buys in the youngsters, hope they do well to then sell them on for the profit and then keep that replica going. We don't buy players that are good here and now at the top class levels that we're going to bring in to try and improve us. It's always a case of not sort of taking a gamble, but you're bringing in the players hoping that they get coached, they play well, the team do really well, and then they get moved on for a profit.
Yeah, I actually, again, I keep going back to my Twitter, but I actually tweeted, we was having a conversation about Director of Footballs, and I said in a really weird world, which I don't think coexists, I would love for Paratici to come in and oversee the kind of experienced and ready-made signings, and Langer stay as part of almost like a head of youth recruitment sort of thing, the younger players in the first team and also the under-21s. And then a couple of days later, it was linked that potentially could be a way that we look at it. Now, I don't know whether Langer I would in theory guess that that's a kind of drop down for him. But I think you're exactly right. I think just having Paratici as the single, I would like him in, but he needs help, basically. I completely agree. And then we'll just quickly run over this because it's been one that's going on for a number of weeks. Is there any standout candidates that you would take if Ange was to go? Chris, go on. I'll start with you.
Obviously, we've been linked with quite a few. I think Glasner would be interesting for the style of football he plays. But also, I think Xavi would be a good manager. I'd like to think he'd be a good manager. And I'd like to hope that he would bring in the coaching staff that would we've got quite a young team. I think if we can get the right coaches in to coach these players to be players into the tactics that he wants them to play and the way that he wants them to play, I think with good coaching, the players that we've got can go to that next level. I think like Archie Gray, I think he's obviously been played around everywhere because of injuries and he's been moved around everywhere else. But I think if his position is going to be the number 6 or just in that centre midfield, if you can get a coach who can coach him in that role, I think he will become an exceptional player. There's no doubt the talent's there. I think he just needs to be coached the right way. And this probably goes for a lot of our younger players. So I'd like to think that Xavi, if he was to come in, he seems like he wants a project. the base that we've got of young players now would be good. He probably would have like to bring in that experience as well. So you've got that around the club, and also just to help the younger players and bring that here and now in for next season. But I'd like to think that he would bring a coaching team with him to play a certain style of football that would benefit Tottenham.
How about you, JJ? Anyone stand out for you?
I'm not sure there's names, but again, it's probably because I don't watch enough of other teams' football, right, to really get into it with what their managers are doing over a long period of time. I've said this before. The only thing I really care about is that whoever is being brought in is able to tick a couple of boxes. I want to see them match the Tottenham way that we want to do things, right? So we want to impose ourselves on other teams. We don't want to be a defensive counter-attacking team. So a lot of people looking at Nuno at the minute at Forest. That's just a perfect fit. That's a manager going in with a style that works for that team. We may have treated him unfairly, but I don't think we'd have ever
going to work
right at Tottenham.
Never.
So I want to see a manager that comes in, that wants to impose himself, wants to play attacking football, is doing something interesting. So either you are at a club that doesn't have the best resources in the league that you're in, and you're showing that you're overperforming where you are right now. So that shows you've got something about you. It's either your manner with the players, the way you coach your players, a bit of X factor, or you are, tactically you are aware enough that you are outperforming your budget and your wage bill in the league that you're playing. Someone like that is who's going to fit Tottenham, because we know we're not going to go and put the money down for, a first 11 or 14 that is better than anyone else in the league. So that's not us. So I want to see that kind of thing. And then the other thing that I'd like to look at is somebody who is willing to bring through young players, just because me personally, that's what I'd like to see. And again, there are reasons why that works for Tottenham. It's the model we're clearly leaning back against, that we used to use anyway. We used it years ago, and we were very good at doing it. We stopped doing it, and then all of a sudden we've hit a brick wall. The wheels have come off, and we've decided to start doing it again. It's the kind of thing we want to see. We love having young players come through at Tottenham, and there has been a lot of investment in the academy and getting young players through. And it's the one place that we've actually been spending money, putting cash on the table, is to bring in prospects. And yes, you could argue cynically that's because we've got one eye on being able to sell them later on, but it doesn't really matter if they are good quality, and if they do develop with us, you're probably still buying them cheaper than you would if you bought the finished product. So it doesn't matter to me. I want to see a manager that does basically those three things. If they can show me those three elements, I don't care what the name on the tin is. The only manager I could think of recently that ticked those boxes was someone like Xabi Alonso, Real Madrid bound, I'm sure, or something like that. So I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but those are the key things I want to see.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. I like Xavi, and I think he could bring something to the team. I think he brings that star quality. If you're like a Berival, for instance, what a player to kind of learn from. My big concern with him is Premier League experience, even and also the fact that he's never had it. He's not even had it as a player. And would he be able to work within the remit at Spurs? And then I do like Glasner. I think Glasner kind of fits perfectly with what we are. He does overachieve. It's just the football needs to probably be a little bit less counter-attacking. So exactly what JJ was saying. But they are, I didn't really think along the terms of being able to outperform as a club, which is kind of what we are. That's what we need to do. We need to get lucky. But they're exactly the two things that I've kept saying, is that whatever the manager is, we need to forget about going out and getting the best manager or the biggest name. We need to have an identity, a style of what we want to do, where we want to go. Do we want it to be attacking football, which I think is the Tottenham way, pressing, ferocious, that sort of stuff. And we're clearly going down a youth project. So don't go and sign a manager that doesn't play youth. It's just absolutely pointless. You're right with Nuno. You bring in a manager that just does not fit with what you're going for. If the rumours are to be true, that apparently he wanted to play 5 and was told he had to play 4 at the back. I mean, it's just nonsense. You're just bringing in a manager and holding them back before they've even started. So I completely agree. And then, as I say, we won't go through a couple of the comments. We won't go on for much longer. We're just coming up to 11 o'clock. We've got Mikey, the Mighty Cockerel saying Xavi Ball needs elite ball players like Pedri's and Yamals. Yes and no. I mean, he was out in Saudi or Qatar, wherever he was at, and I'm sure there wasn't the Pedri's and the Yamals there. So I think that he will improve players. You can tell tactically, them sort of players, Xabi Alonso, they know football. I think they'll make some improvements. Archie Gray's a couple of seasons away. I don't think he's a couple. I think a loan move next year, potentially to Leeds. If they say that they're going to start, they're going to take him on and play him regularly. I think that'd be a great move. But if we're in Europe, I think he needs to stay. I think he'll be a very good option. Hansi Flick, Barcelona. Yeah, that's a dream move. A bit like Xabi Alonso. That's an absolute dream. Where else have we got? Need to be a little bit more pragmatic. And that's what I don't agree with the Allegri, but I think that's what's happened at Spurs. I think we've gone Conte, then we've gone so far extreme, and then the next one will be pulled back slightly. Last thing before we wrap up, guys, and this is obviously there'll be a lot of people that could turn around and say certain signings don't really fit or anything like that. But you can either do it on the basis of like we're really weak in one position, so I want to sign in, or is there a player that you guys like think, do you know what, if we brought him in, he would just be able to go to another level? 1, 2, 3 signings, whatever you kind of think. Which signings would you like to see us make? Obviously, there's a lot of things that kind of go into this. Is do we get Champions League? Do we not? Who the manager is? That sort of thing. But is there any sort of players that you think I'd just love to see him at Spurs? Start with you, Chris.
Top of my head, I don't know. Not too sure. Position-wise, I think we need a left winger, a holding midfielder. Looking like we're going to need another centre back to replace Romero. But I can't think of any players top of my head actually that I would probably try to bring in there. The only, if we was going to ever bring someone back, it would be Harry Kane for me. I've said it all the time. I think we need to just get him back. I think he would. I think having that elite goal scorer again with the team around him, I just feel like that when you've got the luxury of having someone like Harry Kane up front for so long, who done so much, and then you lose him, whoever was going to come in to replace him was never ever going to step up, fill them shoes that we all was hoping for. So that'd be the only player that I think if he come back in the summer magically, if something was to happen, that would make me sort of think, here we go, we're getting serious now. But I'd have to have a think and get back to you.
Harry Kane, bringing him back. Oh, what a pipe dream that is. JJ, is there any players that kind of stand out for you?
I don't know if it's individual players, loads of players that you'd love to have at Tottenham. I think we should definitely be looking at wherever we can do business within the Premier League, because one of the things that in the state that we are currently, depending on whether the manager stays or goes, etc., is if you do bring him from the Premier League, at the very least, you take out one potential element of why a player either doesn't work or may take time to work. So you've got much more likely that someone hits the ground running if you bring him from the Premier League. There's plenty of very interesting players. You'd have, Mbumo from Brentford. You have Eza from Palace. You'd have who else is doing brilliant stuff this year? From Bournemouth, Semenyo. Plenty of players to bolster our number 10 options, our wide options. I think we need a striker, a competitor for Solanke, and then
what do you think of the lap?
Yeah, youth project.
The lap, I think could be quite good.
Yeah, 100%. He's strong, he's quick, he's good technically. Plenty of development available. Played in the Prem, so we've had a good look at him. Physicality is not going to be an issue for him. Still plenty he can work on. He needs to calm his game down a little bit. But would be a good signing, and arguably an age profile where you could share the minutes between him and Solanke more comfortably than if you went, people looking at Gyökeres and people like that. Gyökeres doesn't come to Tottenham. You don't sign him for 70 million and then he sits on the bench happily behind Dom Solanke. So, there are other issues. We need left back cover or competition. We need another centre half, arguably on the left hand side, and that's without even talking about who goes out the door.
Yeah.
So who's leaving? And I mean, I hate to say this, and this is like the controversial stuff. For me, if Tottenham Hotspur are going to compete in the Champions League, because we're winning this thing on Wednesday, like if we want to be in the top 4 in the Premier League and competing in Champions League regularly, there's players like Vicario, who I am not yet convinced is the goalkeeper who keeps you in that bracket. He might be the right goalkeeper for us now, and I love him character-wise, but is he the right player? You've got to start thinking about these kind of things as well.
No, I completely agree. I definitely think there's quite clear levels, especially in the Premier League. And sometimes you need a stopgap signing. I'll never forget when we signed Wilson Palacios, come in for a 12 month period, but that's all you're coming in for because we need to then go on to another level. But in Mbeumo, for me, it just makes so much sense. And also, I was going to say, I think there's so many players in the Premier League that are going to move to other Premier League teams this year. I think there's going to be a lot of money spent. I mean, you've named a couple at Bournemouth. There's a couple at Brentford. They all start moving around. Cunha. All of a sudden, Wolves have 60 million to spend. And I think there's going to be loads of transfers taking place this year, and potentially all within Premier League clubs because, as I say, there's so many standouts that could fit in. I completely agree. I definitely think that Vicario is probably a top 6 keeper. But if you're looking at Champions League, and that's why the club's kind of at a standstill in my eyes, because until we know what happens on Wednesday, all targets go out the window because the level of let's use Romero goes, because I think that's going to happen regardless. If Romero goes, I think we've got a good chance of Gay if we go for him, if we get Champions League. But if we don't, then I feel like Newcastle is a shoe-in to go there. So no, I completely agree with a lot of what's been said. But all we're going to take from this is that everybody in the chat that's watched tonight from the panel, we're going to be European champions. That's what I'm taking from tonight, and that's the end of it. What do you think of that?
Damn right.
Let's hope. Keep everything crossed, but let's hope so.
Right, I really appreciate everyone coming in tonight. We've had messages the whole night. I've been struggling to keep up at times, to be honest with you. Some great insights from both you guys. We've probably agreed a bit too much, to be fair. We kind of seem to agree with each other quite a lot. I need to get some more controversy, and we need to get some terrible takes on the next show for sure. But everyone's link is in the description below. So JJ, you're on X and YouTube as well, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah. And then Chris, you've got your X account, which you keep saying you're half starting up and you're just starting to get a little bit more active on. So I need to start seeing you a little bit more active on that, my man. But big shout out to everyone. Thank you very much for popping by. Thank you for all the messages. Please like, subscribe, and of always, come on, you Spurs. Peace out, guys. Thank you very much.